Hello everyone, I want to thank you all for being here with me today. Hope you're all having a great evening. We are going to have a full house today, but that is okay. Today, we're going to be discussing 5 tips for the World Series of Poker. The World Series of Poker is just around the corner, and, well, if you're watching this way later, I'm sure there's some other big tournament series right around the corner. So, I'm going to be giving you 5 tips to help you have your best chance of success. First things first, who am I? I'm Jonathan Little. I'm a professional poker player. I've been doing this for about 15 years. I've cashed for over $6.8 million in live poker tournaments. I'm also the author of 14 best-selling books, including Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, Excelling at No Limit Hold'em, etc., etc. I'm also the commentator on many poker shows, including the World Series of Poker whenever they stream it. And I'm also the head coach at pokercoaching.com, where you can go there and get a completely free trial. There we have tons of quizzes, tons of homework, and lots and lots and lots of ways to improve. I see many of the people here today in this webinar are regulars there. They work hard to improve their games, and I am excited about that. Mark says, I used to have awesome sideburns. Yeah, I used to be awesome. Now I'm just an old man. Should you be seeing my screen? Yes, you should be seeing my screen. If you're not, there's a problem on your end. So first things first, what are your goals when you go to the World Series of Poker? This is a very important question because a lot of people don't actually ask themselves this. They just get a pile of money and go to Vegas and see what happens. So ask yourself, what do you really want to get out of your World Series of Poker experience? Here are a few things. One is you want to give yourself the best chance of winning a bracelet. You don't care about bankroll. You don't care about winning money. You care about winning a bracelet. Well, if that's the case, take all of your money, load up all the tournaments, and do that. I know quite a few players who play in local events, and every year they win something like $5,000 or $10,000. Then they take that $5,000 or $10,000 to Vegas during the summer, and they don't care if they go home with nothing. They want to have a shot at winning a bracelet. So they are happy to fire it in on, $3 or $4 $1,500 tournaments, and with any luck they'll win some. With no luck, well, they won't, and they're okay with that because they're recreational players. They're not actually trying to make significant money from the game. They just want to have an experience and have a good time. Next, you want to come home with some money. If that's the case, well, maybe you need to shy away from World Series events to start with, right? Like, let's say you do go to Vegas with $10,000 for 2 weeks. Well, if you fire it all in a $3,000 tournament and a few 1,500s, well, you're out of money in 5 days, right? So you need to be a little bit more structured with your schedule to the point of, maybe not even playing World Series events. Maybe you need to be playing $500 tournaments at other places. But as you spread your money around to more tournaments, that's going to give you a better chance to have some cashes. And as you give yourself more opportunities, you'll eventually get a big score. Maybe your goal is to go and party and have fun. I have a few friends who are business people. They're very well off in life, and they're going to go in for a few days, play a poker tournament on their first day or two. They're going to be out there for only a long weekend. They're playing only one tournament. They're going to go out there. They're going to take that tournament as seriously as they can. And then after that, after they're done, they're just going to party for 3 days straight. There's nothing wrong with that, right? But these 5 tips today are going to assume you want to win as much money as possible. You want to have the greatest possible return. You want to have the highest equity possible, right? This essentially assumes we are trying to win money. This does not assume we're trying to party. This does not assume we're even trying to win a bracelet. And this does not assume we're trying to get a minimum cash. This assumes we are trying to have the highest possible expectation in terms of dollars. So, tip number 1, probably the most important one, is to study before the series. If you are looking for last-second advice, well, you probably made a mistake. Every day, I get multiple emails from people saying, I made day 3 of a big tournament. There's only 18 people left. What should I do? What are some last-minute tips? And I mean, if you have to ask me at this point, it's a little bit late, right? You just need to have studied ahead of time. I mean, once you arrive and you're there in Vegas, ready to play, the best advice is to simply play to the best of your ability. But fortunately, there's still more than a month between now and the World Series of Poker, so you can spend significant time studying, right? You have time. If you're going to Vegas or to any tournament series, certainly you want to improve your skills. So use the resources I have available to you, like pokercoaching.com and jonathanlowpoker.com. There I have a lot of blogs. Someone asked me about the Big Blind Ante at the World Series of Poker. You can go to jonathanlittlepoker.com/bigbblindante. I have videos on all sorts of topics on my YouTube channel at jonathanlittlepoker.com/YouTube. So those are completely free videos, completely free resources that I want you to use to allow you to improve your skills. So make use of it. Eric says he just signed up for poker coaching and there's so much on there, he doesn't know if he can get through it all before the World Series. Well, maybe you can't, but that's okay. You can get through as much as you realistically can, right? And certainly some studying is way better than no studying, which is actually what the vast majority of players do. Believe it or not, the vast majority of people who go to Vegas, they go there to play for a long weekend, maybe a week, and they don't study at all. They don't really play a whole lot, and that's it. So if you're doing more than them, well, you're going to be a little bit better off. And if you want to do as well as the pros, or at least have a decent shot of doing well, you need to study a lot before you even go out to the series. Tip number 2, make good use of your time. If you go out to the World Series for a long weekend, realize that after you bust, you're going to have the rest of the day to fill. So you need to find that you can beat and grind it. This is a fantastic way to give yourself a good shot to actually make money. If you go out there and you're going to play 5 tournaments, I mean, let's be real, right? You're 20% to cash each tournament, give or take, if you're good. So that means what? You're going to cash 1 out of the 5 on average. Sometimes none, sometimes 2, maybe 3 if you're really lucky. And even then, when you cash, you're going to get, 1.5 buy-ins back or 2 buy-ins back on average. So usually you're going to be down if you only play 5 tournaments. But if you find some soft games that you can play in your spare time, you can do quite well. Single table satellites are one of my favorite things to do, and one of my students' favorite things to do. They are particularly soft during the World Series of Poker. Whenever you play them, they're essentially 10-person tournaments that are winner-take-all. And, they are somewhat high variance, but they only take an hour or so to play, so you can actually play a large number of them. One summer at the World Series of Poker, I spent all of my free time playing these, and I ended up making about $100,000 that summer playing only single-table satellites. And that's pretty valuable, right? Just to be able to sit there in my spare time after the tournaments are over and grind out 100K. It turned a relatively marginal series into a nice winning one. And I'm going to be discussing more about my single table tournament strategy later. Let's see. Are the satellites super tight fish mostly? No, there's a wide mix of people. I mean, I'm actually going to be discussing my strategy for satellites later, so we'll get into that. Be patient. Shouldn't you be finding tournaments if you're a tournament specialist? Perhaps. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? If you are spending your time going from one casino to another, playing tournaments that have high rake, right? A lot of these quote-unquote daily deep stacks, they are full of soft players, but very often the structures are poor and the rake is high. Those may not be so ideal for you, right? I mean, as you see, the bottom line here, right? The side tournaments are often soft, but your potential ROI is quite low due to the poor structures and the high rake. I know at the Rio, I think they have 3 daily tournaments, or at least they did last year. Something like 1 at 2, 1 at 6, and 1 at 10 or something like that. And the rake was something like 25 or 30%. I mean, sorry, you're not winning any money on that. Hate to break it to you. So you do not need to be spending your time in those. Listen, I'm trying to tell you ways to make money. I'm not trying to tell you ways to get stuck in a rake trap and not make any money. Obviously, some people are going to run hot and win, but whenever the highest potential ROI you can have is something like 40% and they're raking you 25%, that means you're going to make 15% ROI if you're like the best in the world. 15% ROI on 4 hours of play in a $200 tournament is awful. You'd be way better off playing either single table satellites or cash games, in my opinion, and single table satellites are the closest thing to, well, I guess essentially they are cash games, but they're closer to tournaments than cash games. Do you think before the series you should play online? I think playing online is certainly a good thing if you can do it. It's definitely a viable thing, a viable way to get good. Should you be playing on the free play apps? I would definitely not suggest that. I think you can find better use of your time. Is the rake at the Rio single table tournaments lower than multi-table tournaments? Yes. Yes, it is. All right. So find games you can beat and utilize your time well. Remember, the goal is to make money, so spend your time playing poker. They make it really easy for you at the Rio, actually. Whenever you bust the main event area, you almost have to walk through the cash game and the single table tournament area. So on your way out, take a look, see if the games look good, and if the games look good, don't be afraid to hop in. All right, tip number 3. This is perhaps the most important one, or one of the most important ones, is to adjust to your opponent's tendencies. This is very, very important because most people at the World Series of Poker play quite poorly. The events are quite soft, so you want to figure out what your specific opponents do incorrectly and then adjust. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, many recreational players fear going broke early, so be willing to apply pressure intelligently, especially when their range is capped. I remember playing, I think it was the Monster Stack or one of these tournaments that attracted a ton of people. Maybe it was the Millionaire Maker. I don't remember which one it is. They seem to name one of them every weekend, and that gets a lot more people for some reason. Anyway, in that tournament, I had something like the nut low early in the day, like the draw, and I think I just 3-bet or 4-bet all in on the flop with the nut low draw, and my opponent folded something like top 2 pair face up. And it's because the opponent really didn't want to go broke. Remember, this player came to Vegas to play one tournament, and here some kid's putting him all in on the first hand, and he only has top 2 pair. You know, I could easily have a draw, right? And if I have a draw, he's just out 40% of the time, and he wasn't willing to be out 40% of the time. Could you imagine how bad he would feel to his friends going and saying, 4 minutes into the day, I'm out of the tournament already? He just can't do it. He cannot do it. And there are a lot of people who will end up making these egregious mistakes because they just really don't want to go broke because it's so incredibly important to them to survive and have the World Series of experience. And they're not going to let you get lucky and rob them of it. That said, some players really don't like being pushed around. So value bet them thinly. Very often you'll find these players are trying to play lots of pots. Maybe they're looking at you a little bit funny, and they really don't want to be the person who gets pushed around because in their mind, that's the worst thing that could happen. Really, you want to figure out what people are going to do incorrectly and then adjust to take advantage of that, whatever that is. Some people are maniacs, some people are super nets, but you're often going to find that the people are like even farther on the spectrum than you are used to in most normal games. And that's because especially in the $1,500 or $500 tournaments, right? These are like the one big tournament of the year that these people get to play. I'm sure you all saw on social media this guy whose significant other gave him, I believe it was a seat to the big 50 tournament. And the guy was like happy and crying, right? And that's fantastic. I'm glad he loves poker so much, but you can be pretty confident he's not going to be broke in the first hour. He's just not going to be because he cares that much about getting the experience. And, well, I'm happy to get in there and push those people around. Okay. Tip number 4, scope out the venue. A lot of people just show up to the Rio the day of a tournament and they're completely lost. So first things first, show up early. Okay, tournament starts at 11 or 10 or whenever it does. Figure that out, obviously. Locate the restrooms. There's a secret one out by the pool. So there you go. Tip number 1, I just saved you all. So you do not have to wait in a line to go to the restroom. And you get to walk outside by the pool for just a minute, get a little bit of fresh air. There's actually shade pretty much on the way to the restroom, so you don't even have to get hot. You get to get kind of fresh air, as fresh as you're going to find right out by the Rio, because the other entrance is filled with people smoking. So go to the one by the pool. That's probably your best bet. Next, find your favorite food vendors. I like All American Dave's. All American Dave's is essentially a healthy food option. It is rather pricey. I think it's something like $25 for a meal. They will deliver it right to your table. If you're going to be there for the entire summer, you can buy a package to, I think, get it down to something like $20 a meal, give or take. And that's a good thing that I always do. I show up. First thing I do, I go buy into the tournament. And then I walk right over to All American Dave's, give them my money, and then I know I don't have to think about it for the rest of the series. So that is definitely something else you should do. You can just text them. You don't even have to go there. So it's very, very nice and very, very convenient, right? Convenience is quite valuable when there are piles and piles. There are seas of human beings out there playing poker. To not have to wait in line, to not have to deal with things like that is very valuable. So these are the two things you really need to do, right? Us humans, we need to eat and we need to go to the restroom. So there it is, 2 good tips. You don't even have to wait in line for either of them. What more do you want in life? Is there a list of vendors that will deliver to your table? I do not have one. I just use All American Dave's, and I don't know why you would not want to use All American Dave's because it's good, healthy food at a fair enough price. I mean, listen, $25 a meal is certainly not cheap. The meals probably cost them $4 to make, but that's fine. You know what you pay for. Also, it's healthy stuff, right? You need to be eating healthy stuff at the World Series. Next, register for events when the lines are not long, okay? I register the night before each event when possible. This implies that I'm going to be showing up on time. If you buy in, very often you do have to show up on time to play. I'm not exactly sure of the rules this year, but I presume that is going to be accurate. So if you don't want to wait in lines, that's definitely the way to go about doing it. You don't really have any other good options unless you show up like an hour or so into the day or something like that. Aaron says online registration has just opened up. Aaron, I don't know if they are charging credit card fees or not. I know one year they were charging exorbitant credit card fees to buy in online. If they are, don't pay that. And the Big 50, if you're not seated within 2 hours, says Mark, one of our regulars here, welcome Mark, they may give your seat away. Yeah, well, don't do that. Yes, there are still credit card fees. There's an extra $17. I mean, listen, 3.5% rake is egregious. Don't pay rake for fun. Don't pay rake for fun. I remember one year, the first year they did this, a guy who backs a lot of players, he was very, very proud of the fact that he bought in something like $1 million worth of people on his credit card, on his Amex, because he was going to get back 2% or something like that. He's like, look, I just get 2% for free, so I just made myself $20K. And then he didn't realize they were going to get him for, I think, 3.5%, so he was actually down $15K. So that was fun. Let's see. All of you are asking somewhat tangentially related questions. We'll get to all these after this. Make sure you get your player's card before you go to register. That is a good one. Quite often the player's card area is a ways away from the actual area where you buy in, so make sure you get your player's card first. To buy in, use a cashier's check or bank wire. If you use a cashier's check, there's a chance you may need to show up a day or two before with that cashier's check. So what's the workaround for that? Well, get enough cash for your first tournament or two. So that may be, I don't know, $3K or something. And then get a cashier's check for the rest. And then that's a nice little workaround. Mark says he's mailing it in his end. He's a true gambler. Okay, next, bring a water bottle and healthy snacks. You definitely want to make sure that you are hydrated and not hungry. I have this smoothie mix I always take with me when I travel called Living Fuel Super Greens. It's not particularly delicious to eat, but it is apparently very good for you, and I like it. Also, take the water bottle. They have giant water canisters around the tournament area, so you can use those to fill up your bottle. Next, for some of you, this is going to be the most important advice by a mile, is to avoid your vices. So, listen, all of us have issues, and you probably know what yours are. If you don't know what your vices are, well, you need to ask your family and friends because they know what your vices are. And it's important to understand that vices suck your attention away from poker and onto irrelevant, destructive activities. So it's important to note that I don't even really care what your vice is, and your vice may not even be actually that destructive, but it will suck your attention away from poker. A very clear example of this is watching sports, right? Whenever you are watching a sporting event, very often you are not paying attention to poker. So obviously don't be betting on sports because then you're really going to pay attention to it. But I know in Vegas there are all the people out there who love their hockey and love sports in general. People in the poker world love sports. And if you are sweating your phone or watching it on TV, well, you're probably just not paying that good of attention to poker, right? You always want poker to be the number one thing on your mind. Before you do any specific activity, ask if it will help you play better poker, right? Will this actually help me improve my skills? And for the most part, vices are going to cut into your sleep, right? If you're out partying all night, well, you're out all night, so you're not getting enough sleep. If you're out drinking or doing drugs, same story, right? You're not going to get a good night's sleep. If you are gambling in the pit all night, same story, right? So it is vitally important that you avoid your vices, especially if you're going out with the intention of winning money, right? If you're going out to Vegas to party and have a good time for 3 days, well, maybe that's the time you're supposed to be getting into your vices and having a good time. And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to win as much equity as possible, you need to make sure you are staying 100% sane and not losing your mind. It is so incredibly important. Finally, when you go out to Vegas, make sure you do enjoy yourself. So many people, especially towards the middle or end of the World Series, will be walking around looking like zombies because they thought they were going to win all the tournaments, and instead they just lost 30 tournaments in a row. Realize what you signed up for, right? Poker is a game that has a lot of variance. But poker is a game, right? And games are supposed to be enjoyable activities. Remember, you signed up for this. Don't forget that, right? If you signed up for this, if you agreed to partake in this activity, well, why should you be unhappy when things don't go your way, right? Understand that even most pros lose on average during the series. Now, I'm not saying they lose equity, but think about it, right? Say you play 30 tournaments, odds are you're going to be down. That's just how it is because you're only going to get something like 5 or 6 cashes, and most of those are going to be min cashes. So if you min cash in, let's say 6 tournaments, that gives you maybe 10 or 15 buy-ins, and you put in 30, so you're going to be down 50% a lot of the time. And that's just math, right? The thing is, though, you're going to have big scores every once in a while. I'm trying to think. In my World Series, I think I've had something like 6 final tables, and even then, I think 1 or 2 of them were not even particularly big. And, when you make a final table, you have a decent year. And when you don't make a final table, you don't have a decent year. And so I think I've been at this, goodness, when did I start? 2006 or 7, something like that. So that's about right? 12 years, I've won money half the time and lost money half the time on average. And that's even without me having any sort of big score. So eventually we're going to get a big score, and then we'll be in good shape. But it's important to understand that variance does exist, right? If you play well, realize you will have a great chance to make a deep run and have an extremely profitable series. That is what you are trying to do. Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little. I hope you're enjoying this Thanksgiving Day marathon. And let me take a second to tell you about a class I did with one of my students, Blas Zerjau, in preparation for him to go play the World Series of Poker. Blas is a young poker player. He recently turned $5 into $1.3 million on Party Poker. That's a pretty good run. And he said that he learned a lot from my free training content. And we got together and I helped him prepare for the World Series of Poker. So first things first, I reviewed the $5,000 buy-in main event that he took 3rd place in on Party Poker for $1.3 million. And then I review over 13 hours of online and live hand histories that Blas played in preparation to go to the World Series of Poker. And he had a few deep runs at some small events. I know he just had some deep runs in, where was it? Prague recently. And he's still out there doing it. He's very smart. He's not just going to take his $1.3 million and fire it in there. He's setting himself up for retirement first, and then, using the leftover money to play poker and see how it goes. Worst case, he's set for life. Best case, he's going to crush poker and still be set for life. Not such a bad result for a young man. So, if you enjoy the back and forth I have with my students where I review their hands, they fix the problems they have, they play more, I review those hands, they fix the problems, they play more. If you enjoy that type of back and forth interaction, I have a lot of that on Poker Coaching Premium. I've done it with Nickel Segal, who got to play the $25,000 buy-in tournament that PokerStars put him in for free, and for many others. So check that out right now at pokercoaching.com/Black Friday to get your membership to Poker Coaching Premium and to take your poker skills to the next level.